All right, so welcome back everyone for another deep dive. Today we're diving into a really interesting Chinese military simulation,
Oh, yeah.
one that looks at how a U.S. missile attack on a PLA carrier group might play out in the South China Sea.
Yeah, really fascinating stuff and definitely relevant, I think, for anyone who's trying to understand, the
Absolutely.
current state of international relations.
Yeah,
It's,
especially,
yeah,
for those UPSC aspirants out there who are, really focusing on that area.
for sure.
So what makes this particular simulation so interesting is it focuses on the AGM-158C LRASM, which is
Right.
the long-range anti-ship missile, also known as the Game Changer.
Catchy name?
Yeah, it is a catchy name, and the whole point of this simulation was to figure out how this missile works,
Right.
and more importantly, how to defend against it.
Yeah, and what's I think really interesting is the level of detail that they went into
Right.
with this simulation. They've managed to include all this, highly specific information about the LRASM, stuff that wasn't really publicly available before. So,
So this isn't just like a,
no,
some kind of theoretical exercise.
not at all.
This is like really getting into the nitty-gritty
Yeah,
of how this game changer would actually perform in a real-world scenario,
exactly.
which makes you wonder, like, how do they get all this information?
Right. That is the question. They're
Yeah.
saying it's all open source intelligence and long-term accumulation.
Right.
So basically, they've been gathering information from publicly available sources for, who knows how long.
Cool.
But you know how much of that is actually true? Who knows?
Yeah. I mean, it definitely raises some eyebrows.
Yeah.
But for now, let's just focus on the simulation itself.
Okay.
So the simulation takes place near the Pratas Islands
Okay.
with the PLA carrier group, closer to mainland China. And then you have the U.S. carrier group operating outside that 9-dash line.
Right.
Now, for those who maybe aren't familiar with that, the 9-dash line is basically what China uses to claim a big chunk of the South China Sea,
Mm-hmm.
although it's disputed by a lot of other countries.
Yeah, a lot of other countries do not recognize that.
Right.
So that adds another layer of complexity, I think, to this whole thing.
Exactly. Yeah, that location is definitely a key factor here.
Absolutely.
So within this setting, the simulated attack involved 10 LRASMs
Wow.
launched from various U.S. platforms, and they were all targeting a Chinese destroyer
Okay.
that was escorting their aircraft carrier.
So it's getting serious.
Yeah, this is like
They stay.
pretty intense stuff. So what can you tell us about how the LRASM itself performed during this attack? Like, what did we learn from this simulation?
Well, that's where things get, I think, particularly interesting.
Right.
So the way the LRASM behaves during the attack is really something. So it's depicted as cruising at a high altitude initially, and then it drops down to just 14 meters above sea level.
14 meters.
14 meters,
That's like
skimming the waves
barely.
off the
It's
surface.
super stealthy.
Wow.
Hard to detect.
So what happens if it encounters electronic warfare interference? Which, in a real combat scenario is almost a given.
Right, you got to assume that's going to happen.
Yeah.
So the simulation shows it switching over to thermal imaging for guidance.
Oh, okay.
So it's like a backup system that lets it basically see heat signatures.
Oh, I see. So it can adapt
Adaptable.
even when it's being jammed.
Exactly.
That's pretty impressive.
It is.
So it's adaptable. It can overcome those electronic countermeasures. What else stood out to you about how it performed in the simulation?
One thing that was really kind of surprising was they showed it doing this maneuver where it like pops up in altitude for a second
Oh, wow.
and then dives back down to strike.
It's like taking a quick look around.
Almost like it's getting its bearings,
Yeah.
double checking the target.
Making sure it's got the right spot.
Exactly.
That's fascinating.
It is.
And again, that raises the question of
Yeah, how did they know about that? How did they know about this behavior? This wasn't public knowledge before this simulation came out.
exactly. That's another one of those details that makes you think,
Yeah.
maybe they have more information than they're letting on.
Right.
But let's delve a little bit more into the LRASM itself.
Yeah, because it's clearly earned this nickname Game Changer for a reason.
It really has.
Yeah.
What can you tell us about its background? Like, why is it considered such a big deal in naval warfare?
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting. It wasn't actually originally intended to take out ships.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it evolved from this other missile, the AGM-150A JASSM,
Okay.
which was designed for land attacks.
I see.
But as the plan, the People's Liberation Army Navy started becoming, a bigger force,
Right.
the U.S. Navy saw the potential in this JASSM
Go.
and adapted it for naval warfare.
So it's a direct response to the
And-
growing strength of the Chinese Navy.
Absolutely.
Wow. So what makes it so special compared to like older anti-ship missiles? What advantages does it bring?
Well, one of the big ones is range.
Okay.
LRASM can travel about 575 miles,
Wow.
which is way farther than older missiles like the Harpoon.
Okay.
So that means U.S. forces can engage targets from much farther
So
away,
they can stay safer.
potentially outside the range of some of those Chinese defenses.
Yeah, that's a big deal.
Big tactical advantage.
Huge tactical advantage.
Yeah.
So longer range, but what else, what other features make it so formidable?
Well, it's also got stealth technology,
Okay.
so it's harder to detect on radar.
Yeah.
And here's the big one. It can identify and target specific parts of a ship.
Oh, wow.
So you could imagine, for example, taking out an aircraft carrier's elevators.
Right.
The things that move the planes between the deck and the hangar.
Yeah, you take those out.
Yeah.
That carrier's not going to be operating very well.
Not effectively at all.
So stealth precision targeting anything else.
And it's versatile. It can be launched from a whole bunch of different platforms.
Yeah.
Okay.
You got your B-1B Lancer bombers, your F-18EF Super Hornets.
Right.
They're even testing it out with the F-35 Lightning fighter jet.
Oh, wow.
So it's hard to counter.
That's a lot to take in.
It is.
So longer range, stealthier, more precise, can be launched from all these different platforms.
Yeah.
No wonder the Chinese are taking it so seriously.
Yeah, this is not something to ignore.
And it's not just a one-off thing, right? This
Yeah.
is part of
It's part of a bigger strategy.
yeah, like a multi-pronged approach.
Exactly.
So they're not putting all their eggs in one basket.
Yep.
They're developing a more diverse and unpredictable offense.
Yeah, that's the idea.
Hmm.
Make it harder to defend against.
I see.
So you've got the LRASM, you've got things like the Naval strike missile, and they're even working on hypersonic missiles.
So they're really trying to stay ahead of the curve.
They are.
This simulation and the LRASM itself are clearly sending a message.
Yeah, what do you make of it? What does it mean for both the U.S. and China? Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, I think it shows how much of a threat the LRASM is to the plan's assets.
Mm-hmm. Especially in a place like the South China Sea.
Right. It seems like both sides are really aware of how the landscape of naval warfare is changing.
Absolutely. This simulation is proof of that.
Yeah.
Both sides are studying each other very carefully, trying to understand what the other one is capable of.
And that's essential, right, for developing effective countermeasures.
You have to know what you're up against.
Right. And it also raises a really important question. What steps might China be taking or considering
Right.
to counter this LRASM threat and, maintain their naval power in the region?
That's the million-dollar question, and that's something that we'll definitely explore further as we dig deeper into this simulation.
Yeah, we're just scratching the surface here.
Exactly.
There's a lot more to unpack.
Absolutely.
So stay tuned for more.
We'll be right back after the break. So when we talk about countering the LRASM threat, China's got a few options on the table.
Okay, like what? What are they thinking about doing?
Well, one thing they could do is really focus on beefing up their electronic warfare capabilities.
Okay, so make it harder for these missiles
Exactly.
to even find their targets in the first place.
Exactly. Create all this electronic noise. So
Yeah.
it's like trying to find a needle in a haystack.
Yeah, you're basically creating a defensive shield that just disrupts the LRSM's targeting systems.
Exactly. You got it. And another thing they could do is really invest in developing their own long-range, stealthy anti-ship missiles.
Oh, so basically fight fire with fire.
Yeah, kind of, create their own version of the game changer.
Right, so if they have their own missiles that are just as capable,
Right.
then the U.S. Navy has to be just as cautious.
Exactly. It becomes a deterrent,
Right, so it's like a technological arms race.
It is.
Yeah.
Each side trying to outdo the other.
And it's not just about the technology either.
Right. No, you're absolutely right.
You got to have the people who know how to use it.
The human element is crucial. You need highly skilled personnel to operate these systems.
Absolutely.
To make those split-second decisions in real time.
Yeah, that's a point that I think often gets overlooked.
Yeah.
You could have the best tech in the world, but if you don't have the people who know how to use it,
It's useless.
it's not going to do you much good.
And that's especially true in a place like the South China Sea.
Right, where things are already so complex and unpredictable.
Exactly. It's a volatile region.
Right.
It's not just about having the weapons, it's about having the right people and the right strategies.
It's like a giant chess match.
Perfect analogy.
Both sides constantly trying to outmaneuver each other.
And this simulation, it gives us a peek into that chess match that's always going on between these major powers.
And it shows how important these simulations are
Yeah.
for military planners to understand how warfare is changing
Absolutely.
and how to adapt to these new threats.
They're not just playing games.
Right.
These simulations have real-world consequences.
Yeah, for keeping the peace, for global stability.
Exactly. By understanding, what these new weapons can do
Right.
and how adversaries might respond, you can make smarter decisions.
So this simulation, even though it's hypothetical,
Yeah.
it's actually helping to shape real-world policy and strategy.
Absolutely. And it shows, how important it is to stay informed about these things.
For everyone, not just, people in the military or the government.
Everyone who wants to understand what's going on in the world.
Especially for those UPSC aspirants.
Absolutely.
Focusing on international relations.
This is crucial stuff for them.
Understanding, these military capabilities, the strategies, the potential flashpoints.
All of it.
It's all essential.
If you want to work in diplomacy and international affairs.
So I think we've done a pretty good job breaking down this simulation.
Yeah, we've covered a lot.
And gotten some really valuable insights.
Hope our listeners are finding it useful.
But before we wrap up, I want to go back to that detail about the LRS and them popping up in altitude.
Right before it strikes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fascinating.
It really shows,
Yeah.
how much attention the Chinese are paying to this threat.
Yeah, they're not messing around.
They're not just acknowledging that it exists. They're really trying to understand.
Yeah, they're digging deep.
How it works.
Trying to figure out its weaknesses.
Exactly, and using that knowledge.
To come up with countermeasures.
Right.
It's not just about building bigger ships or more missiles. It's about really understanding your adversary.
Their weapons, their tactics.
Their mindset, even.
And that brings us back to those potential countermeasures.
Right.
We talked about electronic warfare and building their own advanced missiles. But are there other things they could do?
Oh, for sure. One thing they might focus on is strengthening their A2AD capabilities.
A2AD.
Yeah, anti-access area denial.
Okay, what's that?
Basically, it's about making it really hard for enemy forces to operate in a certain area.
It's like controlling a specific region.
Yeah, like the South China Sea.
And making it super risky.
Exactly.
For anyone to come in.
You're creating this defensive bubble.
I see.
That makes it really costly for an enemy to project power in that area.
And that could involve a bunch of different strategies, right?
Absolutely. It's not just missiles. It's advanced radar, electronic warfare submarines, surface ships.
So you're creating this multi-layered defense system.
Exactly. One that's really hard to break through.
That's a lot to think about.
It is.
So we've got this really complex situation in the South China Sea.
Yeah.
The U.S. is developing these game-changing weapons, like the LRASM. And China's responding with their own measures.
Yeah, their own missiles. Their focus on A280.
It's constantly changing.
A very dynamic
It
situation.
requires constant analysis and reassessment.
For sure. And it really highlights how important it is to think critically and to stay informed.
About these developments.
Yeah, we're living in a time of rapid technological change in the military. And it has huge implications for international relations and global security.
So it's crucial for everyone to understand these trends.
And what they might mean for the future.
Exactly, because knowledge is power.
Absolutely. Especially in a world where technology is constantly reshaping everything.
Well, I think we've done a pretty good job diving into this Chinese military simulation.
Yeah, I think so.
We've come away with some really valuable insights.
Hope our listeners have too.
But, as always, there's more to explore.
Oh, yeah.
We encourage you to do your own research.
Yeah, absolutely.
And keep thinking about these complex issues.
Yeah, it really is like a giant game of chess, each side trying to anticipate the other's moves and, counter them.
It is, and that, this constant back and forth, this strategic dance, it really has a big impact on the balance of power in the region.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the introduction of something like the LRASM with, the range, the stealth, the precision targeting.
It changes the game.
Really does. It's a game changer in the truest sense.
And it forces all the other players, not just China, to rethink their own naval strategies. Yeah, it's like a ripple effect.
It is.
That goes way beyond just the U.S. and China.
For sure.
So where do you see things going in the future? I mean, with this technological arms race, what can we expect in terms of naval warfare, in the years to come?
Well, I think we're going to see even more emphasis on developing and deploying these super sophisticated weapons systems.
Even more advanced than what we have now.
Oh, yeah. We're talking hypersonic missiles, unmanned platforms, AI systems.
Oh, yeah.
It's going to completely change how naval battles are fought.
So it's not just about building, bigger and better versions of what we already have?
No, it's a whole new ballgame.
Wow.
It's about speed stealth, autonomy.
Autonomy. So,
Drones, underwater vehicles operating on their own.
Wow, that sounds like something out of a movie.
I know, right? But it's coming.
Wow.
This is the future, and it has, big implications for naval strategy, for warfare in general.
There's a lot to think about.
It is.
This deep dive has really been eye-opening for me.
Yeah, me too.
The complexity, the pace of change in naval warfare.
It's incredible.
It is?
Well, I hope our listeners have enjoyed this deep dive.
Yeah, I think we've learned a lot.
Definitely gained a better understanding of, all these developments.
Absolutely. And remember, knowledge is power, especially in a world that's changing so fast.
Couldn't agree more.
So keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep.
And if you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe to our channel and hit that like button.
And leave a comment below. Let us know what you think.
We love hearing from you.
Absolutely. Until next time.
Keep diving deep.